What is climate change? Why is the topic of climate change so divisive? This is Ask the Climatologist, where you send in questions and I go ahead and ask them. So let's keep it simple to start off with. What is climate change?
Yeah, in simple terms, it is just the long-term trends in the mean weather. The whole Earth atmosphere ocean system and how that's changing is climate change.
What happened to global warming? Is that the same thing as climate change?
The changes we're seeing are not just associated with changes in temperatures. And so climate change is a broader term to show, things happening in terms of precipitation, sea level, and so forth. And so it's just a broader term. It doesn't mean that global warming isn't happening anymore, but in many ways, the implications are more than just in temperature.
And one of the comments I typically get when I post stories is people saying, climate change or global warming, they don't believe that's real because they walk outside of their house and they see in their city that it's been raining all week or it's colder than in other places.
Yeah, there's still plenty of variability from day to day, month to month, year to year, and even on multiple year timescales.
And one of the things I explain to people is just because you're not seeing it locally across the street from you doesn't mean that it's not happening somewhere else. And maybe what you're seeing in your city is because something is happening in another part of the world.
That's exactly correct. And again, using the southeastern U.S. as an example, it's not warming up as fast as other parts of the United States. And in general, across the globe, the higher latitude locations are warming up faster than the lower latitude ones. And so you're spot on there that it's one size doesn't fit all.
It's complicated, right? I mean, people want to say this equals this, but this could equal 10 other things.
Yes, that's right. The science of, climate change and so forth is complicated. And because there's so much, again, from a signal point of view, there's so much noise in the system having to do with the fluctuations in the weather that it really makes it hard for a lot of folks to just kind of feel that personal experience. But in many cases, that personal experience has started becoming evident. And especially folks that are growers and people that are, in the out on boats fishing and so forth. They see some of these changes happening if they've been out there long enough.
I've done videos about sea level rise and a lot of skepticism on that. They'll say, well, look, I mean, scientists have been saying this for 20, 30 years now that the glaciers and the ice is all going to melt and sea level rise is going to happen. And they said, well, it should have happened by now.
To be sure, there has been some alarmism in the whole sphere here. But I went and looked at some of the reports that were put out by, groups of scientists around 2001 as part of the initial work by the Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change. And what they were showing at that time, right around the turn of the century, by 2020, was something like 2 to 4 inches of sea level rise in that document itself, but that increase in sea level would accelerate and become much more prominent toward the end of this century. And those predictions were actually pretty good, at least in the last 10 years or something or so. The sea level rise has picked up a little bit, but it's still on the order of a few inches compared to our, kind of recent past. And so it's not like we never expected to, the state of Florida to be underwater by this time. On the other hand, sea level has risen. And one of the things that is very certain is that it will continue to rise. So were the a primary cause for the changes that we've seen over the last century or so. There have been long-term cycles in the climate, ice ages and intervening warm periods and so forth. The sun undergoes cycles. It turns out it's mostly a minor player there. And certainly another actually major effect can be volcanic activity. That periods of a lot of volcanoes, especially those that lofted a bunch of stuff into the high up into the atmosphere, can cool off the Earth for quite a bit. And we've actually seen some instances of that in the last few decades. So there's other things going on, but humans are mostly the cause of the warming that we've been seeing. Mostly combustion of fossil fuels and emission of greenhouse gases. Some land use changes, are in there. And one thing to keep in mind, kind of comparing what's happening recently to the kind of geologic process, is that the rate of change of things like CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere is much more rapid than it was due to these past more natural cycles.
Why is the topic of climate change so divisive? Why does it make people angry and apprehensive? I mean, it seems to me sometimes when people are commenting that they're upset that the worst case scenario hasn't happened yet.
The largest and most serious effects are going to be later in this century. And what we do now as a globe um, is going to impact just how much warming, how much the ice sheets and glaciers melt, the sea level rise, and so forth is going to occur by the end of the century. And so it's kind of present costs for future benefits. That makes it a difficult problem because, from an economic point of view, that this kind of delayed benefits sort of thing. And I can understand folks already, the economic difficulties the country's facing and so forth. We don't want to make it any worse by having to deal with this problem. My response to that is to deal with it now is a lot easier and cheaper than dealing with it down the line.
And it seems to me humans as a species, we're very short term on things. We want that kind of instant gratification and planning ahead even 20, 30, 40 years. We don't do that well. When
Yeah,
we come together is when maybe things are too late. It's right there, right in front of us.
that's a great way to put it. That have a short-term kind of perspective on things for the most part, and one of the challenges is that the actions we take are going to have long-term effects. So short-term problems and long-term effects. Um, it means that it's easy to kick the can down the road. We're not doomed as a species. The world is almost certainly going to be a different place toward the end of the century than it is now, and there's going to be some adaptation that has to take place. But it's not like, again, we're going to go extinct or anything. Um, there's going to be some winners along with losers. What we do now really makes a difference toward the end of this century. And so I would say, look at it from a point of view, what do we want our legacy to be? What kind of world do we want for our children and grandchildren?